This is meant to be an incremental upgrade in the exact same way that you've gone to Argo 2.13, 2.14, or those other minor version releases. What we've done in this release is we have gone through and basically distilled a lot of best practices into running Argo into the default operation of Argo CD. So, for example, any Argo CD admin will very likely, as soon as they install Argo CD, they'll change the resource tracking method from label to annotation or annotation plus label. And why do they do that? Because the name of an application can only be so long if you're using labels, and it gets truncated, and that causes issues. But it can be much longer if you're using the annotation tracking method. So there's a lot of things like that where admins, as soon as they set it up, they have their default settings that they're like, okay, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this. And we basically took all those things that people were doing and pretty much didn't have downsides, and we made those the defaults for Argo CD 3.0. So because that is a behavior change, that is one of the reasons that we waited until a major release to do those things. And we also have a couple of things that we've changed, like, for example, by default, a user and oh, sorry.
I want you to wait for a few seconds. Yes, it's there. But it was super important for Reggie to say that it was really inspired by the community. A lot of feedback was gathered to basically understand what are those default values that are being widely used so that they can be used in the 3.0 version.
Yeah, and in terms of default values, you would say that other projects, right? They got a major release, 4.0, 5.x, when they're going to release a big feature, right? Adding a lot of feature to the project. In this case, Argo CD is such a critical project of like running systems, right? Observability, having systems that are like, if something doesn't work, a lot of things go bad. And then changing defaults was something that the contributors, like the maintainers, was like, we wish we didn't have that default, and people were using that default, right?
Yeah.
And if we wanted to change it, we can change it and say, like, people like, well, we have a new default. But so much people use and depend on Argo CD that changing that is a massive amount of. So the 3.0 is also like a signal, or maybe an announcement saying, hey, watch out, there's something changing, right? And there's an opportunity. And the maintainers, Michael and others, say like, well, let's do 3.0 just to say it's the same as 2.14, which is the last one. And the things that we're going to do is like cherry pick kind of like a few items and not be a big thing, because there's also a lot of machinery, like in the CNCF project, in this Argo CD, CNCF machinery in terms of like switching from 2.x or regular expressions or the Go modules, everything related to that. So there's a lot of like work that the maintainers have to go through to just make it a new version.
Yeah. And so like some of those things are setting changes that relate to performance and security. So for example, one of the things that we did is, I'm trying to see if it's even on this slide, but
the batch or the Redis. I kind of know a few.
Oh, about Redis?
Yeah, we're going to remove the state of the resources and save that in Redis. That would help with the performance with large Argo CD apps that have, or you have a large set of Argo CD apps. If the status is there in the Argo CD resource in netcd, for example, it would create a lot of flapping, right, back and forth.
That's right.
And another one related maybe to that is Alex is doing a lot of work around ignore resource updates everywhere.
Yes,
like,
this is the one that I was going to talk about.
I think that's the one we're talking about.
And actually, this is a good point to mention. Carlos is actually is the head of our SIG scalability. This is a special interest group just focused on scalability challenges with Argo CD and improvements there. So a lot of the stuff that's gone into 3.0 has come from the conversations that were happening in SIG scalability. So hats off to you on that. The resource tracking thing that you brought up, there are a lot of things that are controller handled in Kubernetes where it's expected that there's going to be changes in those resources because of like you're using Kyverno, you're using whatever. And so a lot of those defaults of, hey, we expect that controllers are going to be making these changes that Argo CD shouldn't be tracking. Those have been added as default things that Argo CD will ignore. But a lot of the things, including that one in Argo CD, that those defaults that are changed, you can change them back if you wanted to keep that functionality the way it was.
Yeah.
Okay.
Security awareness, right? I don't know if you have the highlight, but the Argo CD using a config map basically to store secret information.
Yeah,
Argo CD CM, right? Now, like for the longest time, right, we have been supporting Argo CD, create a secret for your Git repositories, put that information there. But it happens like people use old versions and they keep using the same configuration over and over again. This is one of the signals like, hey, by the way, in 3.0, like slap in the hand, right? Like stop doing that bad behavior. Switch over. And then recommendation for secrets, right? Regina put something around that.
Yeah, that's right.
So what is the expectation if the config map is being removed?
So the config map itself isn't being removed. The Argo CD CM config map is still there, but repository connection information has been supported to be stored as a secret for a long time in Argo CD. And that's the ideal way to do it. That's the right way to do it.
Okay.
Storing it in a config map means you have information that should be secret. Like here, it's just showing your password and stuff in plain text in a config map. There's no reason to do that. And so some people have been using that configuration going way back just because we didn't originally have support to store repo information in secrets. But since we've had it for quite a while, it's time to get rid of that from config maps.
So it's also part of bullet number 4, right? Having an opinion on secrets.
Yeah, this is one that I worked with Michael a little bit on. So there's a lot of popular tools that people use to inject secrets into Argo CD generated manifests during the manifest generation phase. So the way that Argo CD works is it checks out a repository, could have a Helm chart, could be customized, could be plain manifest, but it has to distill those into final manifests so that they can be applied to the cluster. And people are using config map plugins, config management plugins or other kinds of plugins that would basically inject secrets directly into those manifests as values and not even necessarily as secrets, right? So like they might take a value and push it into like a name or something like that. And they'd pull that from Vault or maybe some other secrets management tool. And it's just not the way that Kubernetes secrets are designed to work. We have really awesome Kubernetes secrets operators now. And when Argo CD 2.0 came out, there was a lot of change happening with secrets management. We didn't have anywhere near the maturity in Kubernetes that we do today with secrets management. Now you've got like CSI driver, you've got external secrets that's so powerful and just works with basically everything. And so there's really no reason to inject secrets into the manifests themselves and to have Argo CD doing that. So even though you can still do that in Argo CD 3.0, we did come out with a recommendation and said, hey, we really think you should not be doing that. That's not a secure way to do it. That's not a stable way to do it. And you really should be moving to this path. And part of that is to send a signal. Last thing I'll say about it, I'm sorry, I'm talking a lot, but last thing I'll say about it is that a lot of the reason that people have been using these tools to inject secrets into manifests at the generation time is because maybe they're using like a third-party Helm chart that doesn't operate in the way that secrets are meant to operate. And so part of putting out this opinion is to put out a signal also to those Helm chart makers and say like, hey, this is really the way that secrets are supposed to be managed. Please stop doing it this way because it's not safe and secure.
Yeah, I think I was going to add that, but you added it. It's the number one use case that come up a lot. And maybe one of the things that people can do now if they're watching or us come up with ideas in the community, in the Argo CD of saying, what should we do as a community, right? Should we go back into Helm project, right? So the idea, the use case comes usually in Slack and it's like, how do I add this API key to my payment service or my open API key? into my Helm chart? Well, because they're just using the Helm chart, it says that you need to pass this secret key type of information. I was like, why are you passing that over? Like, you should pass the name of the secret that
has the information.
That has the information. And then, so one thing that we can do is get with the Helm community, the Argo CD community, the UI, and start detecting when any Helm charts, or like scan the whole artifact repository, any Helm chart that has a secret, right? You should not be generating a secret at all, and flag them as like, make them be embarrassed, right? Kind of thing. And then like automatically open a issue, right, on that GitHub repo and say, hey, we need help improving the use case or documentation. Maybe sometimes documentation, right, that people don't know that you can pass the name of the secret instead of saying create the secret. The same way you can pass another pattern that is similar, I'll stop also, is service accounts. A lot of Helm charts create the service account, but the person deploying the Helm chart doesn't have permissions to create the service account. So it always fails. So the admin team is the one that needs to create the service account, because it has the power to create the service account associated with the role. And then you pass the name of the service account that you want to use, not the actual content of the service account, or tell it to create it. Just going over a rant, because like there's a lot of time wasted in the universe if that not talking about this topic with end users.
Now, Rovital, I'm going to put you on the spot, and let me ask you a trivia question. It's actually a did you know question. Did you know that if you have a Helm chart that creates service accounts, for example, and there's no flag within the Helm chart, that there is a way to have those removed from the manifest before they're applied?
No.
You did not know that. Okay, so
tell me about it.
The way that I recommend doing that is by using Customize to wrap your Helm chart. And you can then go in and add a patch, and you can remove resources from, it'll render the Helm chart, and you can make modifications essentially post rendering the Helm chart with Customize, and you can remove things like the service account. And if the Helm chart maker didn't add in that functionality, you're not required to still use it, because you can use Customize with Helm.
Yeah, it's an extra flag you can pass to the You're talking in the concept of Argo CD, right? You can enable when you deploy a Helm chart and it has something that you want to remove or you want to add, and hopefully are not secrets. You can like operate right with customized operations like replace, find, like all these things like massage it, something that was not available in the values.yaml. Usually it's the use case. But it's one liner, right, in the Argo CD configuration.
Yeah, you enable the Customize with Helm configuration. Boolean. But I've used that before with Helm charts that didn't use secrets properly. I've made a customized set of patches that would that basically overrode that behavior, added the secret as the normal Kubernetes way, and then set up a separate secret that was generated and managed outside that lifecycle. So there definitely are options, even if your third-party Helm chart sucks, to have it work a better way. But I think we've covered a lot of the basics about Argo CD 3.0.
I have one question here. Oh, yeah. I have one question here regarding to the third one. Making apply nested selectors true, the default and only option. So why is it even part of the configuration if it's the only option and if it's set to true? Why is it not being removed?
Well, when matrix and merge, like when the matrix generator was first made, I think there was a lot of like question mark about like how people were going to use it and things like that. And so a lot of those options were just it was like put out there like, yeah, I'm not exactly, we'll see what people do. And basically the applying nested selectors is something that everybody kind of goes and enables.
Go ahead. I was going to say, this is a symptom related what I said about in the Argo CD community, and Michael and others, and Dan does this a lot, is that when somebody wants to introduce something new into Argo CD at the scale that is used, we want to give an option of like, oh, you're going to add this feature that we add this in the spec. And then everybody says, well, what about if people don't want that behavior? And then you have to put like, I don't want the new behavior. Like, for example, when apply nested, it could be, I don't remember the use case, but maybe let's say that when apply nested selector was introduced, people say like, now it's going to work differently that I used to work, but that should be the correct way. It wasn't implemented correct. Maybe it wasn't implemented the way that we knew that was intended and everybody was happy with it, because it never went to the field. So we just add the feature. This is in general in every feature. And we're doing this with 3.0 of like any features that we're going to remove from things, always give an option of like going back to the other one. So in 3.0, you will see that. And maybe going forward, because maintaining old things becomes difficult, maybe it gets dropped on like 3.1 or 3.2, but it's TBD. But that's mainly the reason that you see things in Argo CD, is because at the time that something gets introduced, it can be used as massive, that it can impact large deployments that people are like, I don't want to like adopt a new thing just from going from a dot release. So that's a reason for many of these default values.
Yeah.
Okay. So I would like to, we went through all of those really quickly. I just have one thing I wanted to mention, support for older versions. At the release day, the following versions will be supported, the 2.14 and 13. And yeah, the planned date was for today. Reggie said that it will probably be happening either today or this week. And then GA will be probably May 6th.
So let's go back to that support dates slide for just a second. So the way that we do Argo support is we release security updates and critical bug fixes less often on the bug fixes thing, but definitely on the security updates.
Security patch.
For current -2 versions. So if current version is 3, then 14 and 13 are going to be supported. Now, when we come out with 3.1 next quarter, we will drop support for 2.13. And at the end of the year, when we come out with 3.2, we'll drop support for 2.14. So this is not I'm going to stay on 2. Whatever for 3 years because I don't want to move to 3.0. This upgrade is pretty safe. And we are providing basically scripts, tools that you can use to detect if you need to make any changes to your current Argo CD before upgrading. If you just do a blind upgrade, even if you have some of these configurations, I think you're unlikely to have like catastrophic problems. You're more likely to have, maybe an error here or there. But definitely, when this definitely go through the blog post. There's a link to the steps to check those things. And when we do a follow-on after KubeCon, probably on Argo CD 3.0, probably closer to GA, like in which is planned for May, I think we'll do a little bit deeper dive on the upgrade process and talk more about that. But it is all documented, and you can jump into that and start reading up on it. And obviously, this is a release candidate, so I wouldn't shove it into production yet.
But if you want to, one thing that I saw good that the community is doing, I put the link. I don't know if one of you can put it into the comments. Is the documentation that Dan said of like we always do a like from previous release to how to upgrade. So there's a 2.14 to 3.0. That one I bet it's going to be a very popular document that people are going to read to know if they can go to 3.0. So you can start reading right now if you're impacted or not, or if it's not clear, the steps in there on how to like make any changes to make your Argo CD installation compatible with 3.0 and not have any side effects. Please review it. If you have comments, you want to improve it, the documentation, open a pull request, because that will be like the source of truth. As people are doing PRs and we're merging code, it always goes with a doc update. It goes with a doc update. I think we're discussing that in SIG scalability the other day of like seeing what are the things that affect either behavior or performance. There's a few that I would improve the performance. I think the last one was batch, operating in batches, the number of cluster events.
Oh yeah, so everything here is a performance improvement. There's no performance negative impacts from any of the features that I've seen for 3.0.
So the guideline is if I have a question or any issue or I need support to just open an issue, or should I also go to the Slack channel and post a question there?
The issue, an Argo CD issue is the best because then that's Googleable and other people will see it and they can answer it. But obviously, you're welcome to use the Slack. If you're one of the GitOps champions, you're welcome to bring it up in our Discord for the people that are. If you know, you know. If you're part of the team, you can talk about it.
Yeah,
fantastic.
Docs issue and then Slack, because the first thing people are going to ask you, where's the issue? So with the details, that usually is the suggestion. But yeah, go to the docs to see, oh, something's not working, and you may find it in the docs because if something's changing, it's going to be in the docs. If something is not working, it's because it wasn't working on 2.14. So don't blame 3.0.
Yeah.
Okay. I think it was a great intro. As Dan mentioned, we will have a full episode about Argo CD 3.0.